This is a video response to Ironhead41 regarding his failed organic seed starting. Anyone else who watches this may gain some information from it, so of course all are welcome to watch. To Ironhead, you weren't real clear in your video on a lot of your specifics, so I'm kind of trying to take a stab in the dark here at some of your problems. First of all, you said that you started with potting soil and then added compost. Ideally, you want about 10 to 12% organic matter in your soil. Potting soil already has about 10 to 12% organic matter in it. So when you added compost to that, you actually put yourself to a level where you have too much organic matter there. And that's going to create some problems because you do have to have some soil there too. Some plants will grow in just plain compost. All will grow, they just won't do their best. Secondly, your compost seemed to be pretty coarse there at the top of your seed trays, and that's actually a little too coarse. It would be okay to be that coarse on a larger scale, like for your garden itself, but in those potting trays you would want about as fine as the soil itself. The reason for that is, number one, the coarseness of it can create some problems there just because it's too coarse, and secondly, because of how coarse it is, it takes a really long time to break down. I mean, with that level of coarseness, and we're talking about years, or close to a year at least, for it to break down. And that means no availability of the nutrients to those seedlings. Compost can take anywhere from weeks to months to years to break down. The finer it is, the faster it will break down and make those nutrients available to the plant. But 3 weeks is definitely not long enough for you to be getting any benefit from the compost. At this point, the presence of the compost is just going to create problems on just a 3-week length of time. Also, something to keep in mind is you didn't tell us where you got the compost. If it's homemade compost, was it finished compost? And of course, you probably know that any organic matter, as it's breaking down, it causes heat. If your compost pile is creating any heat whatsoever in the center of that pile, it's not finished. Sometimes with the lower price, the cheaper compost, you will get compost that isn't finished, and that will create problems in itself because of the fact that in order for the compost to break down, it needs to pull nutrients in, and then as it breaks down, it releases those nutrients back out. If the compost isn't finished, it's actually taking nutrients from those seedlings rather than giving nutrients to the seedlings. And something else is the plants being yellow. That's almost always, there are exceptions to this. This isn't always the case, but almost always, yellow plants are a sign of not enough iron in the soil. Your plants are suffering from iron deficiency. Iron has to be there in sufficient amounts for the soil and the plant to use nitrogen. And nitrogen is what gives you the nice big full green leaves. So that's why your leaves are kind of sick looking and they're yellow looking. There's not enough chlorophyll there because of a lack of nitrogen that stems back to a lack of iron. Now on a garden level, long term, just simple metal filings will work. Iron filings. Rusted is even better than not rusted. But in a case where you're wanting a quick release for your seed starch, you need to get chelated iron. That's spelled C-H-E-L-A-T-E-D. The chelated iron is already in a form that is almost instantly available to the plant and available to the soil. So what you're going to get from chelated iron is an instant improvement, boosting the iron level. Now, a few organic sources of iron are just in their natural form. Good sources are New Jersey green sand, which sometimes you can find it at your local feed stores. It's also used pretty often in swimming pool filters. Other examples, diatomaceous earth has a pretty fair amount of iron in it. White flour has a reasonable amount of iron available. And molasses. Molasses, I actually found out myself. I tried it for the first time this year, adding some molasses into my starting pots to start my seeds, and that caused me some problems. So you don't want to do that in your pots. But if you want to improve the iron in your garden itself, you can mix molasses with water. Heat the molasses, of course, so it mixes well, and use about a gallon of molasses per acre. Not only will that you get the benefit of the boost in the iron, but molasses also have a pretty fair amount of calcium in it. They have some nitrogen. Almost every micronutrient out there is available, and the sugar in the molasses will actually feed the microorganisms in your soil that your garden needs. Those microorganisms will reproduce, and as a result of having huge amounts of those microorganisms, because they're reproducing, they're kind of getting a sugar buzz going, so to speak, you're actually going to wind up with a stronger, healthier garden as far as your plants go. And you'll also find that some of the fungi that live in your garden feed on two things. They're good fungi, and they feed on sugar, and they feed on bad fungi. And a lot of the diseases on your garden plant are caused by those bad fungi. So you'll actually see a reduced amount of disease by boosting that good fungi. Now, what I usually do is, if you're going to use potting soil, just use the straight potting soil. Don't mix anything with it. If you want to make some homemade potting soil with compost, what I like to do is use 3 parts of good quality topsoil to 1 part of good quality compost, ground very, very fine. You could do that any way you want. Run it through a wood chipper a few times. If you've got a leaf vacuum, suck it up with a leaf vacuum over and over again until it's where you want it. Run it through your grain mill, whatever you want to do. And 1 part of soil straight from your garden. What that does is the presence of that soil straight from your garden actually kind of gives your plants a taste of what they're going to have to grow in later on, and they'll actually suffer less transplant shock if they've got the presence of some of that. Now, as far as organic growing, organic materials, depending on how much of the good microorganisms are available in your soil, organic fertilizers are going to take anywhere from, again, weeks to months to years to break down. Now, you can help that by adding some sugars into your garden to boost those microbes up, or you can actually buy different things that have concentrated amounts of the microbes in it. Compost, a really good quality compost that is local, is a good way to do that. And that's actually good in a lot of ways. I would definitely recommend spreading some compost over your garden before you till it the final time. And that's actually going to cause that organic matter to break down faster and release the nutrients to your plants. But you'll find if you've never done organic gardening before in that garden, you are going to need to keep putting the organics in there, but you're going to need to supplement this first year, maybe even the second year, with some synthetic fertilizers, whatever you usually use, whether it's Miracle-Gro or 10-10-10 or whatever. And you'll find as time goes on, you'll need less and less of that added fertilizer, and your goal eventually will, of course, be to eventually phase those out and have nothing but organics. Because the synthetic fertilizers, you've got, as long as the feed store's open, you're okay. But if the food store's not open, dollar collapses, your money won't buy fertilizer anymore. You're out of luck. So if you go ahead and get your soil adapted to organic growing, you'll be ready if that happens. And adapting your soil is one of the most important things with prepping, in my opinion, if you plan to live off your garden. Now, you can do that in a lot of ways. You can, whenever you have coffee, keep a bucket there, dump your coffee grounds in the bucket, and once you get a pretty fair amount of them there, go out there and just throw them around on the garden. Fall, when your leaves fall down, rake those up, put them after you harvest the garden, put piles of leaves all over that garden area and let it start breaking down. Then after the leaves are about all down, till it all into the garden. The garden itself, once you pick the fruits and vegetables and you've got nothing but dying plants left, till those under. You probably saw that happen growing up around the farm. They do that in the fall because it's going to take the entire winter for that to start breaking down and become available. Grass clippings, if you don't have any weed seeds, you have to be sure not to have any weed seeds there, but if you're pretty sure you don't, you put some grass clippings in there. Manure from your animals will do, but again, it needs plenty of time to break down. You don't want to use fresh manure on there. If you use fresh manure, put it in after harvest this fall, and then let it be breaking down all winter, and then by spring it's not fresh anymore. Gradually get that soil adapted, and over time you use less and less. Now, as far as bringing your plants back right now, I would recommend staying with organics because, well, we've already talked about why, and besides that, you get a healthier fruit or vegetable for yourself. It was grown the way God intended, not with a bunch of chemicals. Chemicals aren't good for us. But what you can do to get those perked back up is look, it'll cost you about $30 for a gallon of it, but a gallon will last you a long, long time. Find a product that has a mixture of fish, either fish emulsion or fish hydrosilate, which is basically what's happened is they've taken entire fish, not just the insides, the entire fish, meat and all, and they have turned it into, just pulverized it into just a sludge, and then they've extracted all the liquid from that they can, strained it through, and that liquid is what you get in that jug. And you've got some liquid seaweed. The same kind of things happen. They've extracted everything they can, all the liquid they can out of that seaweed. It has those two mixed, and it also has chelated iron in it. Get some of that. It'll probably have instructions on the bottle. If it doesn't, as a rule of thumb, I'd use somewhere around a teaspoon to a watering can and just water your plants with that. While you're at it, go ahead and do the same thing and put some of it on your garden itself to kind of boost up the nutrient levels in your garden. Now you're going to get all of your core 3 nutrients, and you're going to get all of your every single micronutrient. There are literally thousands of micronutrients, vitamins, minerals, and such in this mixture I just told you about. Now, if it's $30 for a gallon and you're only using a teaspoon at a time, you can imagine how long that gallon is going to last you. A long, long time. So it's not real expensive to use, and in this form it is almost instantly available to the plants. It's just a tad slower acting than Miracle-Gro is. You'll get better instant results from Miracle-Gro, but over the long haul you're better off with what I just told you to use. So give that a shot. If you don't know where to get it, I'll help get you steered in the right direction. Any questions anyone has, any comments, video responses, you're all welcome, of course. I'll be happy to answer any questions as best I can. I'm not, of course, a total expert. However, this information I just gave you wasn't just something I made up in my mind. It wasn't just from reading a book. It came from years and years of research and practice. I'm pretty confident that everything I'm telling you here is correct. There's always going to be some variance for geographic regions, but in a nutshell, the best I can do in this short video, it's pretty accurate, and it's going to be a lot of help to you. Thanks to everyone for watching, and again, feel free to ask questions.